Well, good morning and Happy New Year. 1st of January, actually 2nd of January 24. We've got a 97, a little long in the tooth for a crank no start condition. It's had the parts cannon fired at it, and so far it's been a miss. It's had the fuel pump replaced recently, but not for this problem. I think it was replaced a couple of years ago. It's got 427,000 kilometers on it. It's had the fuel injector assembly replaced. A bunch of sensors, temp sensors been replaced. So first and foremost, we're going to confirm the condition. We're going to pay attention to the tach, see if the tach works, and the check engine light, listen for the fuel pump prime cycle. I heard the fuel pump. That doesn't mean we have fuel pressure. Check engine light is on. So it's firing. The tach is moving, so we got an RPM signal. Let's set the scanner up and have a look at some data parameters. So here's a note. Fill, change distributor, rotor and cap, changed coil wire and coil, changed component beside the coil, I imagine the ignition control module, new spark plugs, temp sending unit, changed regulator on the fuel injection, did not change fuel filter or fuel pump. Oh, did not. They were changed last year. Changed intake snout with the two sensors on it. I guess he's talking about the mass there. Changed computer, but put back the original. Well, that's good because this vehicle may not have security, but regardless, if it did, it wouldn't run without the proper programming. So let's set the scanner up and have a look at some data parameters. So going into the engine control computer, and let's see if there's any codes. I wonder if it's in clear flood mode. It's got a TP sensor code. Of course, that could have been because of ignition coil 1 and 4 control circuit high voltage. That's an odd code. I don't think I've ever seen that before. But that could be set because of having the ignition coil control circuit unplugged. Doesn't specify whether these are current or history. So let's clear them. And read them again and see if anything comes back instantly. Let's try starting it. I lost communication during cranking. That could be because of low battery voltage. Come on, reconnect. That's weird. Oh, I noticed the check engine light is no longer on. No check engine light now, and no communication. I wonder if we lost battery power to the ECM. Turn the key off for 5 seconds, turn the key back on. Now we got a check engine light. And the fuel pump ran. Let's see if it communicates again. The scan tool seems to be locked up. I'm going to have to reinitialize the scan tool. I'm not sure if that was a glitch in the scan tool or if it was actually a glitch in the ECM because I had to restart the scan software. No codes came back. Let's look at data. Concerned about whether it's in clear flood mode. Engine data. TPS 0.5. Well, it's not in clear flood mode. That's closed throttle. Coolant temperature is -2. That's realistic. Intake air temperature is 0. That's realistic. Where's the barrel reading? 4.64. That's a little bit low. But 28.9 inches of mercury, so that's realistic. So I'm thinking some of those codes were in there from him disconnecting stuff. I think I tried to graph the TPS voltage. That's wide open throttle, 4.54. So I think we're going to throw a field pressure gauge on it because I don't see anything out of the ordinary here. He said he checked field pressure, but he's not sure of the accuracy of his field pressure gauge. Ignition on, yes. Ignition voltage 11.7. It's cold out here. Let's see what happens to. And there we have injector pulse width. I just want to see if the battery voltage drops during cranking. Ignition voltage. Well, it drops to about 9 volts, but let's put a fuel pressure gauge on this thing. I've got the fuel pressure gauge installed. I'm turning the key on. Well, that's good enough fuel pressure, but not during cranking. So why didn't he change the fuel filter? There's not enough fuel pressure cranking. So I think he's got a restricted fuel filter. He said it'll start if he plugs it in, and that makes sense. Well, I think he's got a fuel filter problem or fuel pump volume problem. So we're going to have to get this on the hoist, but I've got it running now. When I accelerate, the fuel pressure should go up because of the drop in vacuum in the intake manifold. Why would you change all that stuff and not change your fuel filter? That's a good question. So I managed to get the truck in the shop, and it's been sitting here for about half an hour now. I'm waiting for some parts, and it's over 60 pounds of fuel pressure, static. So I don't think the pressure regulator is a problem. Plus he's changed the pressure regulator, which is inside the manifold. If that was the problem, it would actually be leaking back, and it's holding fuel pressure perfectly. So I don't think there's a problem with the actual regulator returning fuel. It's either got to be a restricted fuel filter or the fuel pump is not producing volume when it's initially cranking. And that's a new fuel pump. Looks like a new tank assembly too. So there's the fuel filter off. I'm going to try blowing through it. It's plugged solid. Thank God. Well, let's put a new filter on it and see if it runs now. So I got the new fuel filter on there. I'm going to turn the key on for the first time. I'm going to cycle the key a couple of times to build up fuel pressure. So we got 60 pounds. See if it hesitates still. So I think that's all it was just a plugged fuel filter. Now mind you, there might be debris in the tank to cause that, so I'm going to have to warn him that he may be changing fuel filters more regularly. So I went to take this truck outside. It had been sitting for about 20 minutes. And it just cranked and didn't fire, just like it did before, but it was running. So I put the fuel pressure gauge back on it. And I'm concerned that that fuel pump may have been damaged by the restricted fuel filter. Notice how the fuel pressure drops when the injectors deliver fuel. When the pump is running, it's got over 60 pounds. And it's holding fuel pressure. I'm going to let it sit for 20 minutes here. So it's the next morning, and I see that I left the hood open with the under hood light on all night. I wonder if that's run the battery down. Fuel pressure has dropped. Let's see what it does. A little slow to build up pressure. Yeah, that fuel pump is pooched. Let's see if I can get it to cycle again. I'm going to get a booster battery on it. No, it is not going to go. So I put a booster battery on it, and I'm wondering if it got a bad ground to the frame. Higher voltage to the pump runs good now. Still dropping. Pump can't keep up. I wonder if I ground the frame. I'm going to see if I can find another booster cable. So I see the frame ground down there is corroded off. So I don't know why I didn't think of checking that yesterday. But that's the ground for the frame. There's another one from the body, but that one looks like it's not in good shape either up there. So I put a pair of vice grips on the upper shock bolt and a ground cable. Let's see if it'll go now. Look how fast the pump ran. Alright, let's get this thing in the shop and fix that ground. So this ground strap goes to from the frame to the engine block, and there's another ground strap that goes, or this one actually goes up to the body, and there's another ground strap that goes to the engine block. There it is there. It's rotted right off. So we're going to make up a new ground wire. Add an extra ground. So I fabricated an extra ground cable, and I ran it to the frame down there right from the negative battery post. This is a dual terminal battery, so I put a top post and I put an extra ground to the body, a bolt rather than a self-tapping bolt. I took this ground off the fender. This fender has been replaced, and I cleaned that ground as well. So I'm going to throw some paint on it and put the air induction back together and park it outside. So it's minus 18 this morning, 0 Fahrenheit. Didn't leave the hood open last night. So the battery shouldn't be dead, but it might be a little low from being run down before I did charge it. See, the fuel pressure has dropped down to 0. That's normal. Let's see how quickly it builds fuel pressure. Why does that pump not be able to keep up? If it doesn't have 55 pounds of fuel pressure, it won't fire. I hear the pump running in the tank. Now look at the pressure leaking down. So that check valve in there is leaking when it's cold. So this thing needs a new fuel pump. On top of a plugged fuel filter, on top of a missing body ground and frame ground. Yeah, it won't run. Watch when the pump stops running. Look at how it's leaking back. So the check valves in the check valve, or the overpressure relief valve, is leaking in the tank. So I'm going to try introducing some propane into the PCV fresh air inlet into the throttle body while it's cranking, and see if that'll make it fire. It's going to be hard to do with one hand. I'm going to set the phone down. As you can see, it's running now. So it's definitely a fuel issue. So since this problem seems to be temperature related, it only happens when it's a cold start, I'm working on it outside. So I'm back here this afternoon. I've removed the fuel pump relay so I can put a relay switch in there. I see that one of the terminals in the relay center has been fixed at one time. So I'm turning the switch on, and that runs the fuel pump. 58, 60 psi. But look how fast it leaks down. Now, it's possible that it's the pressure regulator in the intake manifold leaking back, or it could be the check valves or the overpressure relief valve in the fuel pump, or even the connection between the fuel pump and the outlet line in the tank. Seems to be more prone to doing it when it's cold. Now, there's no way to block off the return line or pinch off the return line. I'm going to crawl underneath the truck and see if it's visible, but I doubt it. And I could use this on the fuel line at the back of the intake manifold, but that's not that convenient. But I'm going to have a look back there and see. Hopefully it's got braided lines back there. Okay, so the smaller line on the right hand side is the return line. I managed to get it off. And I'm going to put this plug in the return. Okay, so now I got the return line blocked off. So if it holds pressure now, then it's the fuel pressure regulator. If it still leaks pressure, then it's the pump. Turning it on. It's deadheaded and it's barely making 60 psi. Turning it off, and it still leaks down. So that confirms it. It's not the fuel pressure regulator. It's an internal leak at the fuel pump or check valve in the fuel pump. With the pump deadheaded like that, it should produce over 100 psi. It's barely making 60. All right, let's put it back together so we can get it in the shop.